Well, thank you very much indeed for inviting me, Liz. And yeah, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure and quite a privilege to be here amongst so many amazing speakers. Yes, as Liz said, my background is in campaigning and social activism, fighting the good fight and trying to empower people who've been disabled or disadvantaged in some sort of way. But I've been sort of pondering, whilst I've been listening to everybody, what will the world be like when everybody knows that whatever their physical circumstances, that they are psychologically fine with all the resources and resilience that they need, with nothing broken and nothing to add. And what will it be like when we all understand that, our insecurities are, no matter how long we've been nurturing them, are in all innocence made up? And what will it be like when we all know to the roots of our soul that we can trust ourselves and trust our intuition and boldly go and follow the very next nudge of our intuition to make a difference in the world? And what will happen when together we allow our creativity and our compassion to flow? How quickly will we come up with the solutions that will sort out the problems of the world? What will it be like? Because heaven knows there's a lot to deal with. At the moment, the gap between rich and poor is getting wider and wider. Now we're at the stage where 8 people own as much as 3.5 billion people who constitute the poorer half of the world's population. There are 65 million refugees. That's more than the population of Britain. There are 200 species going extinct each and every day. And in 30 years' time, at the present rate of decline, there'll be no fish left in the sea. Half the land that we currently use for growing food will no longer be fertile, and there will only be the tiniest remnants of the rainforests left. But despite that, there is hope. There's all sorts of people and organizations around the world who are absolutely on the case. And I spend a lot of time reading inspiring books, listening to inspiring speakers who've all got amazing potential solutions to all of this. But I listened to them all. I was listening to Mac McCartney from Embercombe, whom some of you will know, on Wednesday night, and he's a wonderful, I love him to bits, wonderful, inspiring speaker. But I was still thinking, there's a missing piece of the jigsaw. And, it's my belief that this missing link of appreciating that, everybody has all the well-being and resilience that they need, it is that is going to make the difference, and that is ultimately going to bring about the just, the peaceful, the sustainable world that we all would love to see. My story is pretty similar to many of the others that we've already heard today. One day I tripped over something by accident that completely upended everything. About 10 years ago, I enrolled on a communications course, a presentations course. I have a hunch it was the one that Peter was talking about, which was based on NLP, which I scarcely had heard of at that point. And at that time, I was totally convinced that the mess that I felt, the sense of unworthiness, the unhappiness that I experienced was as much a part of me and as unchangeable as my eye colour. But that course that weekend introduced me to the possibility that this was all down to something that was referred to as limiting beliefs, and crucially, that it was possible to change. Well, frankly, up until that point, I had seen personal development as a load of self-indulgent hogwash. But, you've guessed it, I got hooked. So I went through the whole thing, became an NLP trainer, I went on all the courses, and then one weekend I was on yet another NLP course, something to do with becoming a superstar coach or something. And the presenter, you've guessed it, one Jamie Smart, was starting to talk about some new and revolutionary understanding. And what I heard was that this was kind of turning the orthodoxy of what we thought we knew about the source of psychological well-being, you know, absolutely upside down. But despite feeling pretty confused, I could kind of see that it did sort of make sense that I couldn't feel my past or my future or circumstances or other people. All that I could experience was the energy that was flowing through me, coming and going, right here, right now. So I sort of got an inkling, and then fairly soon after that, I had two quite big insights that really embedded what up until this point had been a kind of, you know, intellectual something to get here, understanding. And the first was, yet another weekend course, was to see that there was absolutely nothing to fix. I was absolutely fine. I was absolutely brilliant at varnishing over that turd that Terry was talking about earlier. More and more elaborate, colourful layers to make myself look really good, whereas inside I was just a complete mess. And what I realised was that that was just an illusion. You know, I was absolutely fine. I had everything that I needed to navigate life. And that having, up until that point, thought that I was, you know, fundamentally and irrevocably broken, this was huge. And then my second insight was to do with being a part of the universe, about unity. Before I came across all of this, I had had a few very fleeting but nonetheless profound moments where I had sensed that I was part of something bigger, and part of something bigger that I couldn't entirely see, and that somehow, in the end, despite everything that I experienced, that it was going to be okay. And there was a comfort in that. And so when I really got it about, when they started talking about this principle of this universal, formless, intelligent, benign energy that animates us all and animates this whole universe, that did make sense, that resonated, and I really felt that. So, yeah, my mind got really quiet. And in fact, I got a bit concerned because I thought, well, if I know that, you know, this is true for everybody, that, you know, everybody is innately fine, whatever, then is there any point in carrying on, taking action to, you know, make it a better world? And that didn't feel quite right, but at the same time, I really thought I was going to sink into this sort of bliss-ninny state where I was just going to hang out and look at the sky and talk to the sheep. But I kind of got curious, and I thought about, you know, the origins of the problems that we see in the world, and that so many of them are attributable to people being greedy, thoughtless, selfish, cruel, or apathetic. And I thought, what is it what does this new understanding show me about that? What is there for me to see? And what I realized was that everybody unwittingly who behaves like that is insecure. And it's not surprising, because we have all been told incessantly, and often for generations, by, you know, our education, our upbringing, society, history, the whole thing, that we are under threat. We've been indoctrinated with the idea that we're under threat from groups of other people, we're under threat from poverty, we're under threat from being isolated and not belonging. We feel at threat of not being loved. And what I realized was that so much behavior is based on on trying to fix that, on trying to find a way of facing the threat. And therefore, that the basis for campaigning was not to try and tell people the error of their ways, but to understand and listen and really help people to see what the origin was of their behavior. Now, you might be listening to this thinking, well, that's all very fine and large for people who've just been a bit egotistical or a bit selfish. What if someone's done something really terrible, like terrorism? Well, a few years ago, I met a woman called Jo Berry. Jo is the daughter of Sir Anthony Berry, who was murdered by the IRA in Brighton in 1984. Jo, understandably devastated, wanted some good to come out of the death of her father. Pat McGee, who planted that bomb, was caught and was then released as part of the IRA Good Friday Agreement 14 years later. And Jo, through contacts that by then she had in Ireland, arranged to meet Pat. So, one afternoon, over a cup of tea, she sat down with him and thanked him for coming and said, please let me know, explain to me all that led to your decision to plant that bomb. 3 hours later, Pat said he had never felt so listened to in his life and that he had been completely disarmed by Jo's empathy. Jo said that she could not say for sure that if she had not had Pat's identical history, state of mind and influences, that she would not have done what he had done. So that afternoon, they made a connection well beyond the words. They understood their shared humanity, and that was 16 years ago, and since then, they have been working together. They go around the world, they tell their story, and they are working with communities that have been in conflict in Northern Ireland, in Palestine, helping people to come together, hear one another, and begin to build peace and reconciliation. 40 years ago, Sid brought us this amazing understanding with great humility and clarity and simplicity. But of course, other people have been nudging us in this direction for some time. So I just want to leave you with a quote from an elder of the Hopi Nation in Arizona, who said, "This could be a good time. There is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel that they're torn apart and will suffer greatly. No, the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open, our heads above water, and say, 'See who is there,' and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to a halt. The time for the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we've been waiting for." Thank you.